息苦しい性格にもってこいだと思うぜ。でも
これ肩とか足とか出てるの?
Oh, don't worry, Kaju. I'm sure there won't be any parents out there who will complain about stuff like that and then have a bit of a stranglehold on the designs of a whole franchise. We opened this week somewhat timely enough. I mean, we're getting close to winter, and the Christmas decorations are pretty much already out. Though this is actually another flashback, this time to when Kaju and Mashiro first met. We also learn what our resident Pink did before then. Miss Noichigo, I'm actually definitely allergic to pollen. But yeah, she eventually ran into her feline friend, frozen in the snow, and looking like, according to her, a Jizo statue, even though I'd say it's more like a simple snowman. Anyway, he had been looking for magical girl candidates, and hadn't gotten any hits until, of course, he met Kaju, who very kindly took him in and warmed him up. Girl, just the fact that you at least admit to that puts you above a lot of your peers. Still, those were enough qualifications to give Mashiro reason to invite her to become a magical girl, with just a little lighting of the gas involved.
Damn
it, I don't have any change. Anyway, said contract seemed to involve a credit card, which, as we'll see even in this very episode, that is often the key component to most magical girl contracts. From there, and continuing the pattern from last week, we saw things from a different angle. In this case, Chroma's first quote-unquote act of evil, which also acted as Kaju's magical girl debut, and how she came up with her alter ego. So, is that still a temp name, or did you settle on it? Just saying, you do have to clarify this stuff for tax purposes. Thus, we again cut back to the present with the usual routine of Chisuko standing hard for her beloved girl of magics, and Florida getting more hurricanes. Fortunately for Chroma though, this weather was not only manageable, but in his eyes, the perfect backdrop for a dramatic battle. So he decided to launch an attack, only to realize it was the end of the month. Yeah, to the show's credit, they actually remembered that little plot point and properly applied it to future stories. Well, to be fair, that deserves to be forgotten. Still, our wannabe big bad wasn't going to give up, so he tried to get Gramps to drive him and Chisuko out, which would be a little hard since his truck was only a two-seater. He figured that he could just ride in the back, which generally you really shouldn't do unless you're securing something, which he did have with some lower quality Kuma Kaijin, probably from Temu. Though they did still get pulled over by the Fuzz, who in probably one of the most realistic depictions ever, mostly did because he was bored and didn't do anything when he noticed that they were transporting some known dangerous materials. Granted, he did think that they were just part of some outdoor stage show, which, to be fair, does kind of match up. And he was right in assuming that they wouldn't pose any danger, as after picking up a little speed, they ended up flying off the truck like leaves in the wind. Still, it did catch Kaju's attention, who, after doing her little transformation sequence that I'm still amazed was done by frickin' Tatsuo Yamada, gave chase. Chroma tried to go to the bear she was chasing, but could only make one portal without another to connect to due to still being in low energy mode. Thus, they decided to just call it quits, leaving the berry hanging on the vine.
This is embarrassing.
The second half of the episode featured both Chroma getting his lower power mode lifted, and Chisuko theorizing that maybe Kaju wouldn't be as strong without her wand. Of course, the actual evil villain never thought about this, and thus immediately tried to pull it off. He managed to lure her out in a way that, to be fair, would be effective against most teen heroes. And on top of that, his drop was actually pretty good. At least it's better than Sharknado. Also, you just gotta appreciate how freaking petty this idiot was, as he ran off with the main weapon of his mortal enemy like a kid who managed to swipe another kid's favorite toy. And like a little brat, he quickly got bored of it and just gave it to Chisuko. I wouldn't get too excited. That thing doesn't even have buttons this year. Speaking of which, Kaju wanted to at least find a temporary replacement for her wand, so she went to Amazon, or rather Dunab, which apparently is a river in Germany, which hey, I'm all for supporting anything that's not lining Jeff Bezos' pockets.
でもダメね。おもちゃばっかりで。
Well, if you buy in the fall, they do tend to be on heavy discount. However, she actually managed to find some commercial-grade magical wands. The only catch was, like most AAA games these days, they required microtransactions. Fortunately, I guess Kaju was loaded. I mean, just look at where she lived. And moreover, she didn't mind as long as she could protect others, which did make for a good character moment. Just ignore how she was pretty much funding an already very shady industry. Good thing I found this on the ground. At the same time, Chizuko actually didn't want to keep the wand, as of course she would want her beloved magical girl to be able to fight at her best, so she managed to convince Chroma to just give it back. Also, I like the little touch that she was wearing gloves. I mean, you could say it was to prevent fingerprints from being left behind as evidence after they stole the thing, but as we'll see in just a bit, there was another reason for it. Anyway, they called out Kaju again the next day. And all of a sudden, she looks a lot more badass than most Precures these days. Though, before attacking like the Japanese deity of thunder, because that's a very magical girl attack, Chroma gave back the wand. Thus, Kaju decided to go back to Old Reliable and sell off most of the rest. Now, you could say she's giving up a rather badass upgrade, but I would argue that she's being a very savvy businesswoman by buying wholesale and then selling the stuff on the aftermarket. And yeah, I think we could all figure who ended up buying all of them. Figuring that Chizuko would need some time alone with her sticks.
Good night, everybody.
Chroma decided to step out for a bit. He ended up running into Kaju and Mashiro fishing, and surprisingly, of this whole cast, he could actually figure out her very obvious secret identity. Yeah, imagine that. Clark Kent glasses don't work all the time, especially when your characters have distinctive neon-colored hair. Conversely, Kaju couldn't tell she was talking to Chroma, even though he only changed it to casual wear, and instead was more distracted by the fish she was catching. Yeah, in a fun change-up, Chroma was the straight man of this story, as he even helped to distinguish the differences between a barbecue and just cooking on a charcoal stove. And I'm sure Hank Hill approves of this. And yet, in spite of some obvious teasing, Kaju still couldn't put together who he was and thought he was just another fan. As a result, he ended up being gifted a whole trout from her, which, ew, you really shouldn't touch those things with your bare hands. And eventually, his true identity was revealed by Mashiro, and thus he had to make a run for it with the fish in hand. This of course made Kaju wonder why her mortal enemy would just casually talk with her. Yeah, no, I don't think Utena and Chizuko would invite him to the cookout. Speaking of whom, Chizuko was vacuum sealing all of the extra wands, again with the gloves on, because she was that kind of a collector, which personally I do disagree with, as you should be able to play with your toys, damn it. Though fortunately, they were also good for handling fish, as the episode ended with Chroma re-gifting Kaju's trout, and didn't say where it came from, lest she tried to vacuum seal that too, and just keep it in the freezer. Like, you really should just eat that stuff fresh. Now, this is the kind of episode I want to see from the show. Just the three core characters kind of putty around and having some good slapstick. Though not to say we didn't get some good, and even kind of subtle character building from Kaju through her dedication of being both a magical girl and person in general. Though, even that good girl act can lead to some good comedy when she tries to maintain that image. While it might sound a little plain, Kaju might actually be my favorite character in the show. Yeah, she does have many of the usual traits of your typical idiot pink lead, but as we've seen as early as the second episode, there are some interesting subtleties to her character. Most notably that, as generally selfless as she can be, she also does worry highly about her image. As a result, it does make her self-aware of the fact that she can come off as a busybody, which again is at least leagues above some others, and more importantly, can lead to some hilarious interactions, especially with Chroma this week. The Stolen Wand story not only gave us one of the funniest images and punchlines in this whole show, but their whole fishing episode was great, as we got to see the usually goofy villain be the straight man for once. It really helps to highlight how fun this main trio is, as we actually do want to see different setups with all of them, and even learn a little more about them in the process. And overall, this is just a fun episode that also helped to develop Kaju a little. It really says something when this comedic parody of the trope manages to have more character development than some mainstream leads, though maybe that's more of an indictment against them. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out some of our other videos, as we might do something a little different for Halloween Day. No promises, but for the day, I think we might be able to squeeze out one more villain-themed video, and I think a certain other magical girl stan deserves her time. Hopefully, look forward to it. Until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and, ooh, got a sale on Macari. Better start wrapping it up.